Welcome to Friday 15 with Master B2B. And our music just suddenly stopped. Did we forget to pay the band? I guess, Andy. Welcome to Friday 15, everyone.
They're on strike.
That's right. They're all on strike. Brian Beck here with Andy Hoare for another Friday 15 session. Everyone, we've got a great topic we're going to be talking about today: personalization. We want to hear your comments. This has generated a lot of interesting heated discussion on LinkedIn. So good stuff. We're excited about that. But hopefully our breaking news music will work. Let's see Andy Hoare. Let's go. There it is. All right, folks. It's a little bit of breaking news. Andy, I don't know if you saw this, but this was posted yesterday on LinkedIn. Job openings are now the lowest since 2021. The hiring rate across industries at 3.5% is the slowest since the pandemic hit in 2020. Andy, so many mixed signals about the economy right now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, and we just got some numbers this morning from the government. The unemployment numbers, job numbers we get every month in the first week. And economists predicted 240,000 jobs created. Mm-hmm. It was 175. And that's on the heels of 300,000 last month in March. So there's clearly a decline. But not only that, but also there was a decline in wage growth, which is fascinating because that definitely indicates softness in the market, meaning people aren't getting paid as much.
Right.
But at the same time, in this topsy-turvy world we live in, inflation's still stubbornly high.
Right.
But nothing's worse than seeing your wage growth going down while inflation stays high, which means you're working longer for less money. That really indicates weakness in the labor market.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I'm sensing just in talking to a lot of manufacturers, distributors in our marketplace, there's some reticence, there's still some caution, I think, in the market around investments for the longer term. Even when there's clear, where there's clear business cases, still it feels like people are still delaying a bit. And I'm not sure what they're waiting for, but particularly around
kind of certainty. We've got wars, we've got presidential elections,
right.
We've got all this stuff going on that at a moment's notice it could all change. In fact, they even said, economists said with these latest numbers that next month it could be up 400.
Right.
It could be up 400,000. It could just bounce back up. And so, boy, how'd you like to be the Fed trying to figure this one out? I mean, they're supposed to indicate what they're going to do with interest rates, and they put out some stuff like, we think we're going to cut rates later this year, but then this happens. All of a sudden, like, well, maybe we aren't. I don't know.
Right. Tough job. Well, yeah, and so let's get we'll keep talking about this, but let's get to our topic, Andy. The question today: is personalization possible in B2B digital commerce? This is a fascinating question, and we posted this on LinkedIn, Andy. And what's fascinating about it is we just, we got it, unlike our usual polls, maybe we asked the wrong question. I'm not sure, but unlike our usual polls, this was overwhelmingly, when we asked the question, is personalization possible in B2B e-commerce? 100% said yes. I think maybe we didn't ask the right question. I don't know. What do you think?
And it wasn't one person either. This was like dozens and dozens of people. Right. I think this is fascinating because there really are two different questions here. One is it possible? And I think what we've heard overwhelmingly is yes, it's possible. Perhaps the better question, and we'll see here in a moment based on some of the comments, is it useful or valuable, or how can it be done? And that's exactly what Jacoby and Jason weighed in on. So in this case, Jacoby had a great comment. I'll read that one, and why don't you read Jason? So Jacoby said, I want to see any of the no answers here. He wants to call people out, and maybe appropriately so, who think it's not at all even possible. He said, though, the operative question is not whether it's possible, but whether it's valuable and useful. Jason says something kind of similar.
Yeah, and Jacoby, by the way, for those of you listening on the podcast, is the VP at Luminos Labs. Jason Hein, longtime industry veteran, Bloomreach and Amazon Business. But Jason said there is a big difference between doing personalization and doing personalization well, and there are a lot of things required to cross the chasm between the two. Amen, Jason. And as we go through some of the data here and some of the comments, additional comments, we're going to see this. We got about 4,000 views of this post, Andy, and on LinkedIn. Clearly a hot topic, and we're also starting to see now the some of the search and personalization vendors weigh in as well, because they need to be thinking about how do you address this, because the stakes are really high. So let's start by defining what is personalization. I took this this definition from SAP, and for those of you on the podcast, I'm going to read it. B2B personalization is the act of tailoring your advertising offers and communication efforts to fit the needs of each B2B customer. It involves smarter targeting and better understanding to deliver faster, more relevant, and expected experiences to business customers. Andy, I highlight here the word customer, because what is the customer in B2B? Is it the company, the individual, the role? Like, the account. Think about account-based marketing, right? Where you're marketing to multiple people. When you personalize, who are you personalizing to, right? To me, that's one of the key questions.
That is the key question. And not like B2C, where there's usually a one-to-one relationship where it's a seller and a single buyer, right? In B2B, it could be a seller and 2, 3, 5, 10 buyers. I mean, I always go back to one of my favorite things about how companies kind of back into this sort of thing. Shopping carts in B2B are used very differently than they are in B2C. Many companies bastardize the use of a shopping cart to get for a kind of a procurement system where they put something in a shopping cart and they'll send an email out to everybody in the company saying, hey, anybody needs to weigh and take a look at this, let me know. And by the way, if it's approved, let me approve. So they basically use a shopping cart as an approval hierarchy. Nobody in B2C is doing that. I mean, maybe some people put stuff in there and they ask their spouse or whatever, or kids do it, but that's very different. So you're right. What is the customer? First of all, there's no one customer. It's usually a team of people who have different roles. Some are approvals, some are validators. There's a whole bunch of stuff.
The users, the budget approvers, the procurement.
And the customers can be very different, right? You might have, you're selling one thing to a company and there's one customer for that, or a team. You sell something else, like Grainger sells light bulbs to a company, but they also sell fasteners, and they sell boxes or whatever else to that same company. So what's the customer? Is the customer the whole company, or is it pockets of people in the company? Is it teams for each product purchase? I mean, this gets very complicated.
Well, it does, but the stakes are high because at the end of the day, the expectation of the buyer. There's some data here we pulled from Accenture. The expectations are high. 73% of B2B buyers want a personalized B2B like experience.
B2C like experience.
Sorry, B2C like experience. So what does that mean? That means they're looking for the Amazon experience, or all these companies that invested for years in creating a relevant experience that has their name on it and understands their past purchases and looks at their web behavior and makes recommendations on content. All these things, they expect it, but it's complex. And the stakes are high, as I mentioned. This is some data here, Andy, I pulled from Wunderman Thompson that says 90% of B2B buyers will turn to a competitor if a supplier's digital channels can't keep up with their needs. You can lose business over this, right?
Well, and I've always said too that B2B is a lot more difficult, in my opinion, than B2C, because they have to do everything now that B2C does, based on the comment you just had up there. Like, people expect a B2C like customer experience. They expect all of the experiences they get from B2C, but on top of that, contract pricing to be, weaved in, approval processes, custom catalogs, on and on and on. So it's like what Ginger Rogers had to do everything Fred Astaire to do, but dance backwards in heels. And I think it's what B2B is like. B2B is a bit like, you got to do everything that B2C is doing now, but also do these other things. And most are not really well prepared to do that.
Andy, where the heck do you get these analogies, man? I love it. It's throwback. Yeah. All right. But the other aspect of that too, and one you didn't mention, is application information, right? How are you using the product? I mean, B2B, sure. I mean, B2C, it's maybe it's a little easier. I'm putting on my shirt to look good today, but and I need to know which shirt's going to make me look the best. But in B2B, you've got all these application differences, and how am I using this product in the field, and what does it go with? Compatibility. What equipment do I already have in place? And hey, does that work with my equipment? Do you already know that I have that equipment? I mean, the personalization level when you think about relevancy of information, is super complex, like you were just alluding to.
So maybe we get the question right and people misunderstood it. Is
maybe.
it possible? Well, in the context of all these variables, maybe it isn't quote unquote
Yeah.
really possible. But I think I do think we need to redefine what we mean by this. It's how do you do a selling scenario where the person on the other end has targeted offers, targeted experiences at them? What that consists of is really the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And so yeah, maybe we should have defined it maybe a little more tightly, because personalization, it can be defined, it can be thought about in many different ways. And one way that people do think about it is as it relates to search. Here's a piece of data from our own research last year, 2023, from our state of B2B e-commerce. It says 61% of B2B sellers have lost sales because their site search wasn't good enough. So site search is one element of quote unquote personalization. And it, perhaps the most fundamental, and one of the ones that's called out the most. When someone types something in your search bar, are you recognizing who they are? Their application, their equipment, their past purchases, their geographic location, all those things. And who, and by the way, in B2B, you have an advantage because they're logged in, right? So you do have potentially some of the aspects that you need to build that. But site search, I mean, if you're not doing that well, that's you're gonna lose customers.
Well, there are more SKUs, there are more derivations of SKUs. I mean, you could have a product that has a number letter combination of 16, 16 letter number combination. If you get the one of those letters or numbers wrong because you fat finger it, it comes back with a null result. I mean, nothing's worse than doing a search, getting 15 of 16 of the characters correct, and then having it come back with not a, oh, did you mean this or this, but rather, no, we've got nothing. You're like, no, I know you have, it's not nothing.
Right.
But that's all part of that personalization equation.
Well, and let's think, Andy, for a moment about, what is personalization when we think about it from a B2C context. When I go on to an Amazon, or I'm going to, shop for myself, or, a consumer goes out, they're using their personal email address. There's, they have a consistency of behavior. There's solutions out there that will look across all of my behavior, across all websites, and even create personas of me as I travel across websites. I mean, there's all kinds of, and then apply that to my shopping experience. Now, the problem here is that that's an individual, and I'm not, I don't change who I am, but people move jobs in B2B digital commerce. So one of the core challenges here, Gen Z workers are expected to have 16 to 17 jobs over 5 to 7 careers. 1 in 3 Americans have changed jobs in the last 2 years. The median job tenure of boomers, those of the older generation, is 3 times higher than that of millennials and Gen Z. Man, these people are jumping jobs. You got to follow them around. How do you do personalization when the people change all the time, right?
Yeah, you've developed this highly evolved, very sophisticated, specifically personalized experience for a person over the course of, say, a year and a half.
Right.
And all of a sudden that person leaves, and all of that gets flushed down the toilet because none of it's really useful, because maybe the role doesn't exist anymore, or it was folded into another role, or they hired a completely different person who has a different remit. Maybe some of the stuff is useful, most of it's not. This is the problem. But if you and I go on Amazon, my profile on Amazon isn't changing dramatically from year to year.
Right.
It's still me. It's still kind of the same stuff. But these people working for B2B companies, it's just not. I mean, when a new person comes in, they can have a completely different approach to how they're going to buy things. And so it's a constant battle trying to catch up with things that are, ever evolving.
So on LinkedIn, Andy, we got some comments on this point, and it was a lot of discussion. And Jeff Hugerheid, who has a long career at 3M, is now at Solventum, I think is how you say it, which is a spin out of 3M. He's leading digital commerce. He said country, customer, and role-based personalization has been the norm for over 15 years. And Jeff, I agree. I agree that those elements, we've seen it certainly in consumer and in B2B. But then Doug Topkin weighed in, who leads e-commerce at Ingredient, which is a huge B2B food products and ingredients distributor. I think they're a distributor or manufacturer, to take personalization. He said to take personalization to the next level, meaning I think beyond what Jeff's referring to, digital needs not only to define a healthy set of personas and journey maps, but also get very good at collecting and managing first-party contact data associated with the accounts. And I think even beyond that, Doug, it's the roles and then understanding and tying together CRM data, tying together ERP data. Because remember, a lot of this purchase happens offline, not online. So we have to look across all channels. That's the other level of complexity. This is not an easy problem to solve, but we're getting some comments in on LinkedIn from this, the search vendors talking about this. Jack Mulberger at Golia commented a few minutes ago about some things about how this is solved based on role-based personalization. So I think that, Andy, is really the solve here, is looking at roles.
But the thing is, I think we all agree that, like what Jeff pointed out, customer, country, role, but there's another level down from that, which is, it reminds me of, like, you might remember that thing we learned in biology back in high school: kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. I'll never forget that. But you get more and more specific, right?
Yeah.
We're at the kingdom, phylum level here, and you have to get down to the species level. And I think what Jeff is suggesting here is that you get to the role at least, but the technology exists today, and it's not true B2C like personalization if you don't get down to the actual person. The challenge is that person can change.
Right.
So you've got to be flexible enough to do definitely role-based stuff, but get to an actual person and be able to transition when a new person comes along. But I don't think it's good enough not to know at the individual level and be able to personalize to some extent. But not like B2C where you can have that for a persistent case. It's going to be episodic.
So Andy, at our summit on June 4th at the University of Chicago, we are going to do a session on this, because this search and personalization and everything related to this is critical. We're going to have Coveo as a sponsor helping us with that discussion. Hopefully, Jack will get Algolia maybe in there too. We'll see. But it's going to be a really in-depth conversation that's going to bring good value to the practitioners, because this is complex, guys. But you saw the expectation is high. B2B buyers need personalized experiences, and I believe, have an opportunity to build a competitive advantage if you do that well. Look at the companies that do these things well. Amazon, they continue to grow, right? So anyway, I think we're coming up on our time here, Andy. But I think it's going to be. We still have a few spots left at our summit for practitioners, not many, but I think we're at 115 now. But if you are interested in joining us, let us know, because this is going to be a hot topic, and we're hearing it from all of our pre-summit interviews as well. So, folks, a couple things coming up here. We got to wrap our Friday 15 up here, but coming up, we have we're going to be at B2B Online next week, Andy, in Chicago. Exciting stuff.
I'm already in Chicago, so I'm just driving down the street.
That's right. You're just driving. I got to fly there. But no, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great session. We've got a couple. We're speaking. We've got a number of dinners. We're pretty full. I think I know on Monday we're full. I think we might have one seat left on Tuesday. So if anyone's going who's listening, let us know fast, because it's Friday. It's next week. And then we have on May 21st, Denver. We're going to be in Denver for our executive roundtable and dinner. We already have over 30 people signed up for that, Andy. It's going to be a great group. And of course, I was mentioning our summit on June 4th. Again, we have a few spots left, not many. We're almost at room capacity. So if you have interest, go to our website, Master B2B, click on events, and you'll find a link to submit an application to join us. So just some basic information we asked for. We'd love to have you there. It's going to be a fantastic group. And then, of course, we always have our forum. Encourage you guys to take a look at our forum. Go to Master B2B, click on forum. You can join only practitioners. Great conversations. We're well up over. I guess we're hitting almost 500. I think, Andy. We're getting close to really getting some great numbers in there. And folks, one thing I want to remind you of is that every one of our Friday 15s is on a podcast, available via podcast on Spotify, Google Play, as well as Apple. And you can also go to our website under resources and find links to listen. We encourage you to take a look, listen to this. We have probably, Andy, like 40 episodes up there by now, all kinds of topics. So any final words before we wrap our Friday 15 this week, Andy?
Yeah, just looking forward to seeing people next week, B2B Online, and then we'll see people at the summit. So the conference season has begun.
Yes, it has, in earnest. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week for Friday 15.